Why does God seem to hide himself, and why can it feel so difficult to know he's there?
When I work with groups or work with people, I ask them, well, how do you get to know God? And I get different responses of, you go to church, you read the Bible, you pray. Here's something I would throw out there too, and it says in 1 Corinthians that Jesus was the visible expression of the invisible God.
Mel, somebody's wondering, why does God seem hidden?
That's a...
This week on the Reach Podcast. Hey everybody, we're back. It's week 2 of Questions from the Field right here on the Reach Podcast, and I'm joined, as always, for at least this mini-series, by Scott Davis and Dr. Mel Cure. And guys, we're just going to jump right in. These are questions other people on the staff of Search Ministries told us that they've gotten recently, just as they're working, talking to people, and we thought it'd be kind of fun to bat them around, throw them out, and just think through what's a simple answer in a conversational style that we could help people learn for these questions. So, and they're pretty common questions. So, Scott, I am gonna just start with you, if that's okay.
That's
Put you on the
great.
hot seat. So, but we'll all help out a little bit. So,
Please,
okay.
help.
Here's a question: why does God seem to hide himself, and why can it feel so difficult to know he's there?
I love the, I guess it's the adjective seem to hide himself. What does that mean? I mean, I feel like when I work with groups or work with people, I ask them, well, how do you get to know God? And I get different responses of, you go to church, you read the Bible, you pray, and I love that. And I said, but here's something I would throw out there too. And it says in 1 Corinthians that Jesus was the visible expression of the invisible God. So I love to tell folks, if you want to get to know God, you got to get to know Jesus, because he is the visible expression of the invisible God. And so I feel like God has made himself known in the person of Jesus. He didn't leave it up to us. He went and made himself known through Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. Mel, anything when somebody's wondering, why does God seem hidden? What do you say?
I'd say, are you sure you're looking? Romans 1:19-20, for since the very beginning of creation, God's invisible attributes, his awesome power and his wonderful potential and character have been clearly seen through what's been made, so that all are without excuse. Is it that he's hard to find, or you're not really looking? We lived in this, I think these days we've grown up with the helicopter parenting, lawnmower parenting. Here we've got a God that's not going to force himself on us. But every sunset that I look at, I think I see way more than the sun going down,
No, for sure. And so just real quick on this. So let's, if somebody wants to say, okay, I hear you. Maybe he is there. I haven't been looking. How do I look? Give me a couple tips. Where do I start looking for God?
Well, like Mel was saying, I just look at nature. I look at the mountains, the seas, the human body, animals, the animal kingdom, and then we have the ability of right and wrong. We know right from wrong. I mean, that's something that's born in us, I believe. And so if we stop and really look at those things, it says that, hey, God is there. And I believe those are the two main things that I look for, like Mel was saying before.
Yeah.
One of my favorite guys on our staff, Davis Kirkendall, when I went through training over a decade ago, Davis came in and said, you find what you look for. You find what you look for. You heard that story where he talks about he's jogged around his neighborhood for decades. Same neighborhood, been there the whole time. And the first 5 years, he saw nothing. One day his shoe got untied. He bends over and there's a $20 bill laying there in the drain. And he said, you want to know how much money I've found since that day running that loop? It's like $600 and something. Every year I check in with him at our staff conference, and what are you up to? And he'll say, I added another $10 or whatever this year. But he goes, the sad part is those first 5 years, I wonder how much I missed. Go look at creation, look at his son through the word, look for God in people. It's crazy to me, the glimpses of God I see in even people like myself, who often can be very despicable. But sometimes I get moved to do something out of compassion that blows my wife's mind. I think if we look, we'll see.
Yeah. And maybe if somebody is getting this question, or if you've got this question from a friend or something like it, a great way to go about it too is to ask that person if they'd want to maybe read the Bible with you. Somebody's got to do it with. Don't just go, hey, read the Bible, good luck to you. But would you want to read John? I'll go through it with you.
Yeah, let's
talk
together.
about it together.
Yeah.
And that'll give you something to do with them.
Amen.
That could be fun.
A tour guide.
Yeah, tour guide. So, okay, Mel, here we
Yes,
go.
sir.
Question number 2. Christians often criticize other religious texts for being the revelations of a single person who claimed to hear from God. But wasn't Moses alone when God spoke to him? What about Paul or John receiving their revelations?
And I'll admit, the first time I saw this question, I thought, I'm going to ask which Christians often do that. I'd never heard that accusation. I'm not saying it hadn't been made. I've never heard it. So as I thought about the question, my thought was maybe what they're talking about is because, sure, most of these folks were alone. The authors of the scriptural books were alone when they got their inspiration. But the reality is there's over 40 different authors. There's over 66 books. The Bible is a book of books. So while Muhammad got the revelation for the Quran, it's not attested to by any other authors as if there's consistency in his message, whereas we've got this divine authorship that runs a thread through these differing authors in differing languages in different continents through different centuries, a period over 1,500 years, and the message is the same.
Hey everybody, I wanted to take a moment and let you know that the Reach podcast is brought to you by Search, a ministry dedicated to sharing Jesus through friendships and conversations for nearly 50 years. Learn more or get involved at searchnational.org. Yeah, and no one biblical author got the whole story.
Correct.
Or the whole picture.
And
so
yet the map comes together beautifully.
Yeah, that's what's so amazing about it. Scott, any thoughts on that one?
You know, I go back to the foundation of our faith, Jesus and the resurrection. And if Jesus did rise from the dead, and then the things he said about himself is true, and you look at Jesus' life in the Bible and look at the words he said in the New Testament, well, he's always referring to the Old Testament. He's talking about Moses, he's talking about the prophets, and then also and when he appears to Paul on the road to Damascus as he's pouring into his disciples and the Holy Spirit comes, he gave them authority to go speak for him as well. Peter and James, healed the dead. Resurrected the dead. They healed people after Jesus was gone. And so I think that the authority of the scriptures come into mind. But if Jesus is who he said he is, the central point of our faith, then we can go backwards in the Old Testament and forwards in the New Testament, knowing that we can trust that.
Because he did. Is that what you're saying? Because he did. Sure.
Yeah.
That.
I think that's a great answer. Those
well
are good
done.
thoughts, guys. Yeah, seriously. Really, really good. Back to you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So many religions, this is actually a cool question. Many religions, not that the rest have not been cool. They've all been great.
Cooler.
They're all
It's
equally
a cooler question.
really
Okay.
good. Many religions have stories of floods and legends. Isn't Christianity just another version of the same ancient myth?
I think it argues for being an ancient fact. The reality is you got multiple witnesses. They're describing this cataclysmic event and or events, a flood. To me, that adds credence to the biblical story of the flood.
Yeah, and it's almost like on this question, they're equating one story from the Old Testament with all of Christianity. Like it's
projection.
it's like it's the same thing. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you. I think it shows that there maybe was something that happened back then.
It'd make me want to go look.
Yeah. Anything come to mind?
Well, it's just like it feels similar to the previous question of going back to where's our authority come from. And if it comes through Jesus' work on the cross and the resurrection and his words, again, I go back to that central point of, okay, well then that helps me go different places. Okay, I've got to eventually trust that. We'll never really know, which, some of these questions sometimes can be smoke screens where they're trying to get you off them, feeling like I'm going to be their project, but I'm going to ask you these questions to trip you up, and they're really not trying to really, I don't know if this is a real question that this person really had, or are they just trying to trip you up? But I would just love them well and listen to them, give feedback, and then go, but basically we don't know.
Yeah. Guys, I want to ask you, either one of you that wants to answer this, but if just taking this question another step further and playing on really the back part of it. So isn't Christianity just another version of an ancient religion or an ancient myth, whatever? What are the differences between what Jesus taught, what's recorded in the Bible, versus the religious counterparts, particularly in the New Testament world? So was the New Testament message just like a bunch of the other religions that were around at that time?
Okay, I'll confess that the doctor you're calling me didn't prepare me to answer everything regarding ancient history, religion. I'm not a student. I'm not qualified to answer that with 100% confidence. What I can say, and I've heard secondhand from multiple sources, is that only Christianity makes the claim that God has done, not here's what you need to do. Every other religion, every other worldview says here's what you do to get to God. Only biblical Christianity makes this amazing announcement, no, God came for you. And it's a grace thing, not a be good thing.
Yeah. Well, and there was a lot of those different religions back then, or even you think of the Greek gods, the polytheistic world, very much so in Paul's day. I've been reading through Acts 17 a lot, so I guess that's on my mind. But what's different even about Jesus compared to those gods is that Jesus, the real God, made everything. That's really where Paul starts, whereas the polytheistic Greek, Zeus and all those people, they weren't able to do everything. They didn't create the world. They might have dominion over part of it, or
so
that kind of thing.
Omnipotence was not
completely different. Grace, like you said. So I don't know. Maybe we'll have somebody else come on who's a
I'll
true
volunteer some
expert.
guys that are ready. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. That was great. That's enough to get you down the road with that question. That's actually a fun one though. So okay, last one. Here we go. Scotty D, why does it matter whether we believe in objective or subjective truth? If my beliefs are helping me live a better life and making the world better, isn't that enough?
Well, I mean, both subjective and objective truth are very important. Subjective truth, obviously based on opinion or emotion. Objective truth based on fact. Both are important. But if I really want to know the real answer and not just someone's opinion, I have a hard time actually when they watch a news show and they start asking these random people their opinions on a thing, and I'm like, click, I'm on to something else. These folks I don't really care what their opinion is. I want to know what happened. And so when you look at our purpose for our life, what happens when we die, what happens, I'd really like to know that for sure, instead of just somebody's opinion. And again, going to Jesus's death and resurrection by believing in him, that he was God, that he forgave me for my sin, that he promises eternal life for me. Based on that fact, for me, I believe that you can prove the resurrection is beyond a reasonable doubt that it happened. And I believe that's where I'm going to put my trust in because of that, not just someone's opinion or somebody that's riffing on some kind of, well, here's what I think. I'm like, well, but what's the real truth here?
Yeah, almost like it's not enough that you just feel good if there's a reality that you're ignoring, such as maybe the resurrection. So if somebody asked you this question, you might try to get them back to that somehow.
Honestly, in conversations like this, I always tend to start going toward the resurrection, because that's something we can all look at and talk about and look at history, look at archaeology, look at the historians and the eyewitness accounts that I believe it is true.
Yeah. Great. Mel, anything come to mind?
Well, I mentioned last week Socrates, the beginning of wisdom is defining your terms. What is truth? I don't think subjective is truth. I think it's opinion. I think it's an option, whereas any truth claim is objective. It either is or it isn't. It's exclusive. So I tend to squabble a lot with guys over words, because I think words are incredibly abused these days, and I think that's leading to a lot of confusion, division, and excuse and avoidance too. It lets us off the hook, kind of. Truth is true, or it isn't.
It seems like the person that asked this question does believe in objective truth, because the way that they worded it, talking about if my beliefs are helping me live a better life, is assuming there is a better life, or it's assuming that they are living some version of, what's good or what they think is good.
Well, and to use the word better, right? It means you've got to have some scale by which you're measuring, some objective scale that says this is better than that.
Exactly. Right? And so what is that?
Yeah.
And if I was talking to this
that?
person, that's probably what I'd say. I'd probably ask, what's your idea of the better life, and why do you think you're living it?
That's why you get to sit in the big chair. I like that.
No. Well, they're not here. They're not. They're not asking me. All right. Hey, that's it. That's a wrap. Week 2, questions from the field. Come on back, and we're going to wrap this thing up next week.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the Reach Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. That'd be a good idea. Share it with a friend and leave us a review to help others find the podcast. Now, for more resources, please visit reachothers.org and follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'd love to hear from you.